Hello, my name's Olivia and I'm going to talk to you about applying for competitive courses. In other words, how to apply for medicine, dentistry or veterinary medicine at university. So you might wonder why people choose to study these courses at university, and there are a variety of reasons that students will give when they come to talk to us. For example, popular dramas on TV have encouraged them to look at that as a personal career. Personal experience, perhaps they've been in hospital or had a relative that's had treatment in hospital. They obviously will have a passion for science. All three are underpinned by very strong scientific understanding. They need to have a love for lifelong learning because you will do that beyond your university career and continue whilst you're working. They might be interested in the good career progression that's on offer within the NHS in particular. They're offered a wide range of specialties as well. Being able to specialise in a particular area as a vet, for example, can be quite desirable because then you will be able to afford specialist treatment to animals in a particular area. And a general interest in working with people is very important for these careers too. So why do we call these courses competitive? Well, the competition factor comes from the number of applicants we have per place. So some courses will have as many as 12 applicants per place, or even more in some years. And because there's only a limited number of places available, then that drives the competition up as well. So as a result, the grades that the universities will state for their typical offers have also increased. So they can be anything from an A star and 2 A's at Oxford to mainly 3 A's for most of the courses at the Russell Group universities. There is a little bit of difference between the grades required, but again, this can change year to year. So what we've done is we've displayed the ranges that might be required for each of the subjects. That doesn't go without saying, of course, that we do also need to look at GCSE results as well. Some universities will factor GCSE results into their selection processes, so it's important that you do as well as you possibly can. They may ask for a minimum number of grades 7 to 9 or a specific number of grades 8 to 9s. Again, it's a changing picture year upon year. So when it comes to your subject choices, hopefully most of you will be aware that you definitely need to take A-level chemistry for the vast majority of all three courses, dentistry, medicine and veterinary science. There are, I think, 2 courses that will accept students without chemistry, but they will have to have biology in place of that. Most universities will also be looking for an additional science as well, so study of biology, maths or even physics alongside the chemistry A-level. But for your third subject, you do have some choice. We would recommend taking an academic subject that has high academic rigour in it and allows you to develop skills that will allow you to progress well at medical school, dental school or vet school. The other thing it's important to note is that it's not essential to take maths or physics anymore. That used to be the case some time ago, but now a lot of students will just that come to our college will take just biology and chemistry and maybe something like history, psychology, geography alongside it, and they do equally well when it comes to receiving offers from universities. So in addition to your academic achievements, you really need to think about looking for some work experience. Now, we appreciate that at the moment that is very difficult given the restrictions around COVID, but we would hope over the course of the next year when restrictions start to ease that it will become easier again for students to undertake work experience. So if you're interested in a career in medicine, trying to get a placement in either a GP or within a hospital setting would work really well. Some of our students this year have undertaken online work experience in place of being able to do face-to-face experience, and that's really helped them out as well to get a good idea of what the role of a doctor's about. You can also look at other healthcare professions too, because it allows you to contrast their role with the role of a doctor and to see how a multidisciplinary team works together to help a patient. For dentistry, it can be a little bit more straightforward. A lot of students will get placements with their local dental practice and be able to go on a weekly basis, maybe for an afternoon a week. It's also possible to get some work experience in hospital as well if you're really lucky. And then finally looking at vet, here variety is the key. The more different examples you can give of working with different types of animals, the better that will prepare you for the challenges facing you as a vet. So in the past, our students have undertaken work in kennels, catteries, on dairy farms where they learn to milk cows. They've done lambing in the spring. They've worked with pigs, horses, and a wide variety of other animals. The key is that you keep good records, so keeping a journal or a diary so that you know how long you did the placement for, and the kind of things that you saw on the placement can be really useful when you want to reflect back when you're writing your application form and preparing for interviews. Voluntary work's become increasingly important for all three disciplines as well. Universities like to see students doing voluntary work because it demonstrates a strong sense of social responsibility, and it also shows an ability to relate to people. Now, in the first two categories, medicine and dentistry, it's a no-brainer. We know that we need to be able to develop relationships with our patients. But some students can be surprised by the fact that vets need to have really good communication skills as well. But imagine if you were a vet and you couldn't communicate well with the client, what was wrong with the animal and how much treatment was going to cost, then your business is going to suffer as a result. So doing voluntary work in the local community or the wider community can be a really good way of developing your communication skills and also helping out at the same time. They also like to see a range of extracurricular activities. They want to find students that are going to be well-rounded individuals who will not only excel academically, but will also contribute to university life. So if you compete at sport, if you play a musical instrument, if you do dancing, if you take part in organisations like Guides or Scouts, the list's endless really, then try and keep that up as long as possible whilst you're at college, because it will allow you to develop skills and qualities that will make you into a good professional in one of the three careers that we're talking about. If you don't do anything at the moment, don't panic. There is still time. When you come to college, there will be the opportunity to get involved with things like the student union. There are other societies as well that students have set up that allow students to meet together. And if it's something that you feel strongly about, you might want to set up your own society too and invite others to come along and join you. So this table's quite useful because it illustrates some of the skills that admissions tutors are looking for when they read your university application, but then also some things that you can be doing to develop those skills. One of the ones I'd just like to highlight is manual dexterity for dentistry. Students sometimes a little bit puzzled by this. What this means is they're looking for you to develop a skill in your part-time outside of your studies that will allow you to fine-tune your motor skills, because when you're actually a dentist you're going to be working in a very small space, somebody's mouth, and using very delicate tools. So the more that you can practice doing something like that, the better prepared you will be for doing dentistry. So once you've started to prepare for making your university application, you need to think about choosing a course, and there are a number of factors to consider when you do this. First of all is the location. Given that you're going to be away at university for at least 5 or 6 years, you need to consider whether or not you need to live closer to home or whether you'll be okay moving further away. The other thing to think about is whether or not you want to study in London, because that comes with additional expenses, but also the loans that will support you to do that. The second thing to think about is the type of course you'd like to learn. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this in the next couple of slides. Some students are really keen on the unique course features that are offered. So that can be things like studying an elective abroad. It could be that their university's got a particular interest, let's say, in equine studies. But again, this is something that you will find out through doing your research about the courses. And then finally, looking towards the end of your course, you want to think about the job prospects that are going to be on offer. When you've spent 5 or 6 years at university and you've obviously invested heavily in training for your future career, you want to feel confident that you're going to be able to get a job at the end of it. So the government has a website, discoveruni.gov.uk, which will allow you to compare data on different courses, and it will allow you to look at the destinations that graduates move on to after they finish their degrees. So going back to the types of course, there tend to be 3 different types of course that run. Firstly, the traditional course, which is similar to the courses offered at Oxford and Cambridge, St Andrews in Scotland and University College London. And this is where they divide the studies into 2 parts. You will spend 2 or 3 years, usually 3, studying the science behind the career that you're looking at, so studying the science behind medicine, dentistry or veterinary science. You may have an opportunity to do something called an intercalated year, which is where you can spend an additional year, so your course length will run to 6 years, but this allows you to achieve an additional degree in something like biomedical science, for example. What you will then go on to do in the last 2 years of the course is you will go on to the clinical practice. So this is where you'll spend 2 years in hospitals on rotation through different departments, being able to put that theory that you've learned into practice. More of the courses nowadays, though, use the integrated approach. So this is where they will have a mixture of different teaching styles, something to suit everybody, but a lot of students that report back to us on this one say that this is the way that they like to learn. So you will attend lectures as you would on a traditional course. You will do skill sessions, but you will also get early patient contact through placements. Mostly teacher-led. And that allows the teachers to keep an eye on what's going on with the course, and means that you're not likely to get off track. They will use seminars to discuss some of the learning that you've done. They will allow you to develop the clinical skills through the lab sessions as well. So it's a really good, well-rounded way of delivering these courses. The third option, which is just a variation really on the integrated courses, is something called problem-based learning. Now, a few years back, more universities had invested heavily in this, but when they got feedback from students, they found that the students didn't like it to be too heavily based in problem-based learning. So they scaled it back a bit, but universities such as Manchester, University of East Anglia and Liverpool still deploy the problem-solving element of problem-based learning. And really, I think this prepares you well for a career in medicine, dentistry or veterinary science. In all 3 disciplines, your day-to-day job will be about problem solving. You will meet a patient, you will find out what the problem is, and then you will look at a way to treat that problem as best you can. So learning like that at university really does have its advantages, but you want to make sure that the support's there to obviously back up what you've learned as well. So just a little bit about the applications process. So all university applications in the UK are done through the UCAS website, which is the Universities and Colleges Admissions Service. They will allow you to apply for 5 different universities and courses, and you do it all on one form. We start this process sometime in the summer term, but really it gets going in the September of the second year that you're at college. And for the 3 courses that we're talking about, the deadline is the 15th of October. So you will have to be ready to put your application together in the first few weeks in September to submit it by the end of September to allow college time to put the reference together and make sure that we send off a really strong application. The other unique thing about applying for these 3 courses is that out of the 5 choices, you're only allowed to put down 4 for dentistry, vet or for medicine. The 5th choice can be used to apply for an alternative course because the universities recognise that these courses are very competitive, and sometimes very good students will get rejected from their 4 choices for those courses. So putting in a 5th course as a backup is always an option for you. The other thing about these courses is that the universities will almost always interview you before offering you a place. These interviews take various different forms and they usually take place from November through to March, and you will learn a little bit more about that once you come to college. But the admissions tutors will use the information from the interview and from your application form, as well as looking at things like GCSE results and admissions tests when they decide to make offers. So in terms of, just to say a little bit about the UCAS form itself, it will allow universities to see the following information. So you'll put your qualifications on there, you put in all of your GCSE grades, you'll put down the A-level subjects that you're studying, but as part of the teacher reference, we would give predicted grades that we were expecting to see you achieve at the end of 2 years. You will write a personal statement saying why you want to study that course at university and the different things that you've done to develop in order to make you a strong applicant. And then you also have the opportunity to record things like whether or not you have a part-time job, or whether you're the first in your family to go to university, or even to spend time in care. These are all important factors when universities are making decisions about offers. So moving on to the admissions tests. Because of the competitive nature of these courses, many of the universities will require you to sit an admissions test. This is not something that you apply to do necessarily in college, although I will say a little bit more about that in a moment, but it is 100% the student's responsibility to organise and register for the test. So it's in your interest to make sure you know when the deadlines are, the date that you're going to be sitting the test, because if you don't do it in the required time period, then you won't be able to apply for those courses. There is a fee to pay, but if you're a student who receives bursary, then there is a possibility of getting that fee refunded. So moving on to talk about the admissions tests. The most widely used admissions test for medicine and dentistry is the test called UCAT, and this stands for the University Clinical Aptitude Test. If you look back on the internet and you're looking for questions, it used to be called the UK CAT, but they since have dropped the K, so it's now just the UCAT. So when you look on your university websites and you're looking at the subject pages for the different subjects that you're interested in, you need to look at the entry requirements because it will tell you on there which admissions test you would need to sit. And this particular admissions test is sat at driving theory test centres. So you have to book that yourself and do it online. So the UK CAT contains a number of different sections. There are 4 sections that are scored numerically, which is verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning and decision analysis. The situational judgment test comes out with a different score where they will score you from band 1 to band 4. There isn't a set way in which the universities use the information from the UCAT. Some of them will look for a certain band in situational judgment, so some will say you're only allowed to have band 1 or band 2. Others will look at the scores for the 4 different areas, and they may look at the total score or the average score and use that to rank you. For example, one of our nearest medical schools, Newcastle, they will use the average score to rank students, and then they will have a cut-off point below which anybody who gets that will not be interviewed. So you again have to check with the universities to see how they would use it, because that can sometimes influence the decision as to where you apply to. So moving on to the second admissions test, Bmat, this tends to be used for medicine and for a small number of the veterinary courses. Oxford and Cambridge require Bmat, as does the Royal Veterinary College in London, and the University of Leeds have recently picked up the Bmat as well. So this test is actually taken in college, but again, you have to make sure that you contact the college's exams officer to book it. And the date is usually sometime in October half term, so you'll have to come into college to do that. The little diagram that I've put onto this slide shows you how the test is broken down. So you have section 1, which is sort of what you would call reasoning questions, which are multiple choice. Section 2 looks at your scientific knowledge, and Section 3 looks at your essay writing skills. Again, with both admissions tests, it's really important that you do lots and lots of practice before you actually sit the test. You can't revise as such, but repeated practice of the style of questions will really help you to achieve the good scores that will stand you in good stead for applying to university. So just to say a little bit about something called widening participation. It's really important that students are aware of this, particularly in the Northeast, because we have a wide number of students that are actually eligible for widening participation programmes. So if your household receives means tested benefit like universal credit, for example, or if you attended a school with results below the national average, if you're first in your family to go to university, so if that means if your mum or dad didn't go to university, then you are still classed as first in your family, even if you've got an older brother or sister who's been, or if you've spent time in foster care. The other one that I haven't mentioned on there, because again, it depends on the different programmes that you look at, is also postcode that can be a determining factor. It looks for neighbourhoods where university participation is low, and that can sometimes make you eligible as well. It's difficult to say which ones are used exclusively because it depends on the different widening participation courses. But I've put a couple of examples on this slide. So we've got Realising Opportunities, which is the University of York, Access to Leeds, which as the name suggests is for the University of Leeds, and the Newcastle University Partners Scheme. All three schemes, if you're eligible, can potentially allow you to receive a slightly reduced offer. So if we look at the partner scheme at Newcastle, for example, a typical offer, conditional offer for medicine, is 3 A's, but with partners where you meet the criteria and complete and pass a summer school, then you can lower that offer to an A and 2 B's. So it's certainly worth looking into, especially if you think you might be eligible for that. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me at the college, and I'll hopefully get back to you as quickly as I can. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for listening.